Alright, so now let me go ahead and show you guys the deck that I'm probably most excited to play. Alright, and this is going to be the sort of like Targon Celestial deck. So, this is it. In this version, I'm trying out Braum, but we could also be running for pretty good value the like Stalking Shadow Splash. There's a lot of different ways to splash this deck. But here, let me go ahead and... So basically this is it. We're running the Daybreak package and we're combining it with like the Celestial and Invoke package. Basically, the reason we're running so many Targon cards is for the sake of this card right here, Mountain Scryer, which is Allegiance. The way Allegiance works is the more of a specific color you have, or region in this case, the more likely it is to get off because it just searches the top one. So by having 37 Targon cards, we're very likely to get this extra effect off, which is an extra Invoke on top of the discount to Celestial cards. So this is like every region has this Allegiance, a different Allegiance card, which is the reason to be in sort of like a mono build of that region. 3 Giddy Sparkeologist is also probably a little too much. I'd love to play around with this and just kind of like see how it goes. So this guy's playing Tarek Leona. Switch to the new board. Oh yeah, I can probably switch to the new board now that the servers are working fine. That's true. Do you want to keep Mentor of the Stones in the opening hand here? Let's keep Mentor. Let me try this. We got Braum as well. So the idea behind Braum's position in this deck is this deck has a lot of permanent buffs, and what that means is given just a small amount of value, like if Braum gets hit by one buff of this, the 2/2. Here, let me move my camera. Yeah, it's I forgot my camera was poorly positioned. If Braum gets hit just off of just this one buff, it's gonna be really, really big. Okay. Man, I kind of like this board just being like chill, relaxing music though, you know? So this one's actually quite interesting. The question is, do we play Mentor into Braum or do we play Solar Priestess? And here's one of the nuances of Runeterra, which is that this idea of like planning out your turns based on like your mana and your attack turns. In Runeterra, you do have to plan out your turns a bit more than other card games. Because we know we're attacking on odd number turns, I'd love to Mentor into Braum, but there would kind of be no point because we wouldn't be able to attack with Mentor Braum until turn 5 anyway. So that means I'll probably just end up doing the Solari Priestess this turn. Wow, we get Golden Sister, the Traveler, and the Warrior. I mean, I've got to go for the Golden Sister, I think. This is just a power card. I don't think there's enough of a specific reason to go to be outside of that. We can take a free attack here. It's not going to do much, but, I mean, he just doesn't have a block. So he's attacking on 4, and he's likely going to have a Tarek to play out here. Usually, you want to be thinking about, like, at every step in the game, like, what their hand is, like, what things they're going to be playing. And now we have a bit of that kind of, like, awkward situation I wanted to avoid, right? Because, you know, I do want to be able to have a bit of a block here, but I want to be able to, like, play Mentor into Braum. I think that's, like, quite important to me. So, in this case, I'll play the Braum out now. I think that should be fine. And we'll wait to see if he, like, hesitates before taking this attack. He should take, basically, an attack of, like, buffing the Tarek into... This would make him... Mentor buffing Tarek would turn it into a 4/6, which is really, really scary. And if he thinks too much about it, then that might actually incline me to believe he doesn't have an option in this hand to kill my Braum. And I might be a bit more likely to take the Braum block in that case. I can't really afford to let my Braum die, though. It's a little too risky. So he went ahead and passed, which is just like a super... I think this is probably a misplay. It's just super face up at that point that he doesn't have a trick. Like, he would never do that if he had a way to kill my Braum. Because he'd have, like... Basically, this can only mean that he doesn't have a way to kill it, right? I think he should have went for a bluff in that position. Because it's a bluffable spot, effectively. So, we have to plan out our turn a little bit here. We do know we want to play Mentor of the Stones, right? But that's going to leave us with 4 mana remaining. What are we going to do with this 4 mana? Well, part of that mana is in spell mana, and part of it's in unit mana, so we can't play Mountain Scryer. We don't have enough for Star Shaping, so that leaves us with Solar Shield Bearer, right? But if we're going to play Shield Bearer, we should play it first so that we trigger the Daybreak, if we, you know, end up even wanting to play Solar Shield Bearer at all, right? We could also just play Mentor and keep the 4 mana up as a bluff so that we can represent some kind of like expensive combat trick that might make him play weirdly. In this case though, I'll just play the Shield Bearer. Not enough reason. It's not a bluffable spot. You don't want to like do like weird stuff for no reason.
Speak, stars. Speak, I say.
So we have a decent position. There's the 2-mana card, and he's got single combat. Single combat's pretty spooky. That's kind of unfortunate. Since we don't have an answer to single combat, he can't just take down our Braum, which is really, really, really nasty. That's gonna swing this game a lot, because now we're gonna have to rely on like Celestials. We don't have like Braum's ability to just like control the board. PP hands, dude. I mean, we can get like some value out of Mentor here. He's gonna block. It won't be like a super high block for value. What are we attacking with?
I'm basically 1/8 gay.
Celestial power.
I think this is probably best. So our Mentor, basically, to be able to buff something 2/2, needs to support, which means it does need to engage in combat, because support just means when it attacks, it buffs the unit to its right. And we want to get that permanent buff, but that means that the Mentor will die, basically, because it means he has the opportunity to block it. Now that's kind of okay, because when it dies, it does give 3 gems. Wow, he's sacrificing his own Mentor. So this is quite surprising. Maybe he's got a hand where he just wants to get the gems quickly. Sunburst is a great draw. So I'm very, very scared about his board and his position. He's playing like a combo-y, like scaling deck, and we haven't really disrupted anything. So he's gonna take like a double buff open attack here. I'm actually pretty okay with that, all things considered. Okay. So there doesn't really seem too much reason to do anything here. So I've got a few options. We want to make sure we're kind of like counting up our plays. We could let both of them hit us, because honestly, health doesn't really matter too much in this scenario. One thing we do know we're going to want to do is we do know we're going to want to kill the Tarek. The Blessing of Targon is a permanent grant effect, so we do also want to make sure we're not giving too much value to, you know, something like, for example, the Ravan Daylight Spear, which is going to be an 8/7. That's going to be kind of like spooky to take down later. We do have the ability to deal a bit of damage down to 3 here, but there's not really a way in our hand to punish a 3 health unit, and he's got gems to heal it back up. And we're not going to get more chump block value out of the Solari Priestess for later. The best play here is going to be block the Solari Priestess to the Daylight Spear. This is just a chump block to heal us 8 health, and then chill. He's got 1 health, so he can't really do a job protecting the Tarek, and because we haven't played a card this turn, we've got the Daylight off of Sunburst that can kill the Tarek here, because it'll silence the unit before dealing 6 to it. Right? So the Tarek dies. This is the scarier card on his board, because even though it's got weaker stats, it has the ability to give value per attack, as well as potentially level up and win the game, right? So we just want to make sure that we're not taking this 8. We'll deal with this later. It's just a big dumb unit. It's not really that big of a deal. And its effect doesn't really matter. It's always day for us. Shouldn't really influence this too much. We just want to make sure, A, we can get, like, you know, the 8 health block out of our chump block. Perfectly fine. And the Tarek is dealt with. Tarek needed to die there. Whew. Alright. So we're not getting too much value out of the Daybreaks here. We do have the ability to like start getting our sister value out as well. We could also Mountain Scryer and just get like a double invoke and see if the invokes give me anything in this situation. I think what I'm going to want to do is just start owning the board, and the double sister is probably the best way to accomplish that right now. I'm still really scared of this big thing. You do want a way to like chump block it for value. Honestly, maybe I should just double invoke. That'll give me a chump blocker at least.
Targon's history is in each stone and star.
Okay, so what happened here is basically what we call in the industry an Omega low roll. This is where we, you know, blame RNG and get really mad at card games and just go play something else instead. So this was a casual. There's 2 hits in a deck of 29. So basically this is roughly a 7% what just happened. And normally this would have gotten us an invoke. So we all just PP hands and move on. We know the top card in our deck is the Braum, basically, is what happened.
Yay, less than 3.
So if I Equinox this, how much value is that actually getting me? I think not much, right? God, I'm actually not sure what to play for here. I'll click Equinox. This is probably trolly. I probably should have gone for the bull. So what I can do with Equinox is I can silence this, and that'll basically make it, it should make it a 5-5. The problem is, like, the 8-7, I don't think the 8-7 is really doing that much here. I mean, our objective is to just be blocking it out anyway, right? Create a random dragon on hand. I'll do this. It does allow us to, like, block it with the 5-4 and kill it. I would have been also just happy just chumping it out with a 2-1, since it's not really a threat that we need to kill. But yeah, unfortunately, I mean, we have no attacks into this board, so we just have to pass. Don't overthink it. Yeah, I mean, in these early stages of the patch, there's not going to be as much strategizing. I just need to, like, try out a bunch of different things. I'm sure I should have just gone for the bull there, but I wanted to try out, like, some interesting positions, like taking a silence and kind of seeing how it plays out. So we don't really need to do anything crazy. I think the biggest thing is to just make sure that we have a good beef representation onto the board. We can honestly just Daylight Spear here. Zenith Blade is, I think, going to be quite useful here. I think there's, yeah, there will come a time where I can use that, I think, for sure. What should we mull for with this deck? So if you're playing this deck, you want to mulligan for your early drops. Basically, your 1 mana Daybreak, your 2 mana Daybreak, your Sketchy Spacer, the like 1 mana Scry. Basically just like early, cheap, proactive things. This is a very, very standard like mid-range game plan. It's very like straightforward to play out. Hey man, you mentioned that the failed 27 out of 28 roll twice was 7% almost instantly. Did you memorize that number, or do you have some trick to calculate 27 by 27 over 28 by 28? So basically, I have a lot of like probabilities memorized in my head. It's just like, I did a slight amount of rounding. It's just 2 cards out of 30, which is, you know, a 1 in 15 chance. And I know I know 15 by 7 is 100%, so it's 7%. I don't actually do anything in my head. I'm actually very slow at doing math in my head. I just have it all memorized. So yeah, this is pretty scary, man. Dude, Tarek's a spooky card when you don't have a way of dealing with him. He honestly is. I kind of want a Zenith Blade just to make these a lot more awkward. Cuz that's the play, right? Let's try this and see what happens. I'm going to Zenith Blade this. I'll see how this goes. So basically, when Tarek attacks, it's going to give itself tough, right? Which means it's effectively going to have 7 health. And I can't play the gem in response to a spell, because even though it's burst, it can't be combat in response to a spell. But because it's burst, I can chain it to my action as long as I do it before my action. So because we know that Tarek's about to get tough, and because we know he only has 2 mana left in hand, as long as I develop a 7 attack blocker for the Tarek that's about to get tough, going to 7 effective HP, I might be able to make this a lot more awkward for him. Now, he just attacked in without hesitation, which is kind of sad for me, because that means he might have something and we might be screwed. Maybe I should have committed the other gem. I don't know. We're good. Look at that. And it's also very important that we don't block the dragon. So why not block the dragon? Well, it got overwhelmed, so there's no reason to block it. But also, whenever an ally with Fury kills an enemy for the first time, you try and create a random dragon on hand. It has Fury, so if we had blocked it, we would have just given him a free card draw. We want to starve his hand out, because even though he's got a 6-card hand, 3 of those are gems, right? Which means they're not real cards. He's low on resources, so our best bet for this game is to win the long-term resource game. So our Leona is leveled, and that could be a little scary for him, because we can start getting some power plays in here. Should we just go? I'm ready to go. Let's just go.
I am the bulwark against darkness. Chosen of the sun.
Her light rules the heavens.
Okay, so it stuns the strongest enemy right away. because whenever we're daybreaking, we're stunning the strongest enemy. And because we have Raven Daylight Spear, or as we call him, Dayman, because we have Dayman on board, it's always day for us. Which means, as long as we play Solari Soldier, even though we've already activated Daybreak, it's always day for us. So we play the Solari Soldier as well, and that triggers Leona's effect yet again. In response, he spell shields, and because he spell shielded while our skill was trying to hit him, he basically neutralized it. It's like a counterspell, right? But again, we're gonna force him to have another one if he wants to keep his unit unstunned. And we also have Star Shaping, which is pretty great here. Now we also know our Daylight Spear has a maximum of 7 health, which means we can heal it up as well. As a great combat trick. So we're gonna do this again. We're gonna trigger Daybreak again the second time the turn, and Leona's gonna use that to stun the strongest enemy again. I am stunning this dragon. He's not gonna be able to block with this dragon this turn. Okay, he has a second bastion. He's totally gonna be able to block with his dragon this turn. God. I swear to God, dude. Okay, so this is fine. Basically, the idea here is, like I said, we're starving his hand out of resources, right? So to drive home a point, this is like really, really important to understand, I think, which is this idea of like resources being an alternate win condition. I'll explain like while we're playing out the rest of this turn. I can take an attack here. The damage doesn't really end up mattering too much, and I do want the health a little bit later. So this one's quite interesting. So we do have Gem, which again, we can't use during combat. We do want to be able to take an attack and put a little bit of pressure on him, and we do want to be able to be mana efficient this turn. You can only bank 3 spell mana, which means we need to spend 2 mana if we do want to make our attack for value here. We go ahead and play a Gem. It's Burst because it doesn't take an action, so we can use both Gems on this. That's going to make it a 9/6 with Overwhelm, and then we can go ahead and solo attack with this. Because it's a 9/6 with Overwhelm, we healed it to the point where he can't really block with his Inviola's Vox because they'll trade, and he needs his Vox more than I need my Daylight Spear. And because it's got 6 health because we healed it twice, he can't block with his 5/5 either. This is kind of the only attack we're getting this turn because I don't want to be giving value to the Inviola's Vox, right? This is the idea. And I think it's kind of the best play here. We didn't really need those gems for later, so this is just a nice clean way of forcing a little bit of extra pressure on him. His best play is actually quite muddled here. Like, we've got Overwhelm because of the Zenith blade that we played before, so he doesn't even have a good block even if he wanted one. Wow, he does not have a combat trick here. Dude, if this one face down was a 3rd combat trick, I would have been so tilted. Jesus. So let's go ahead and evaluate the scenario, right? This is really important to break down exactly what happened here. I want you guys to think about this game as a function of 2 fundamental resources. These 2 fundamental resources are, let's say, Nexus Health and cards in hand, right? And it's important to understand that Nexus Health isn't the only way you lose. You also lose when you run out of cards in hand, because when you can't play anything anymore, or cards on board too, sometimes, unless you can win the game off of like the cards on board within like 1 turn, when you run out of cards, you can't really win, right? And that's really, really important to understand. So our objective here is to stabilize, and that's why we're not really sad about this turn, where he had these 3 face-down cards, and we're not really that sad when he double Bastions and Shield Bearers, because his win condition is having a hand that represents more value than that, right? That's really, really important to understand. Okay, so there's a few different things we can do here. We do want to make sure that we have the ability to, block things for value. Let's go ahead and immediately Star Shaping and just heal our Nexus. Wow, I'm not going for the... Am I going for the Scourge? The Scourge is such a troll card. Is it the best one here? We have a full board, and he is high on health. Am I a Scourge gamer? Let's go, dude. Okay, sure. This is the worst card there, but in this situation, it just makes sense. And now, because we played a Burst, we can do the Lunari, and we're going to be totally fine. So the Scourge is the one that, it doesn't really do damage to the Nexus by itself, but it buffs your entire board. Okay, so we're good. We kind of forced him to trade down his dragon, and that's a really, really big deal. Honestly, I think he probably misplayed. I don't think he was supposed to block this attack. He was supposed to just take damage, because he has so much Nexus health. because he doesn't have the Inviolus Vox anymore, that means he doesn't get to draw cards. That was his draw engine, and that was the scariest thing in that situation because of it. But now it's like, his Fury Challenger doesn't really do that much, because he's not drawing a card off of it, so I don't really mind. Okay. I mean, he has no combat tricks. He's at 0 mana. It's always so nice when you're playing this game and they're at 0 mana, because what that means is, like, you know for sure they have no tricks up their sleeve, right? Pretty much. There's a couple of situations where you can generate a 0 mana trick, but pretty much it's just like a safety thing. So we chose the dog off of the last Discover. I didn't really mention it at the time, but we're doing this to just be very, very smooth curve, right? And we're going to go ahead and go into the next round. Now, we've got the Scourge, and we're ready to just pop. Let's just do it, dude. We're in. I mean, we can just give our entire board Overwhelm here. That's fine. +2/+2 in Overwhelm. So he's going to need a way to stop this from happening. He's going to need a way to, like, stop this effect or punish us bigger. But he doesn't really have any, like, super scary threats right now. He doesn't have Leona in his hand. So the Sunburst is a silence that will stop it for 1 turn, which is a big deal. But it doesn't really kill the body. He still has to deal with this 10-4. Okay, I kind of wish he didn't do that, though. That's quite interesting. So, I don't know what his hand is, but I think he probably misplayed that a bit. He was probably supposed to use the gem before the silence so that he could make my attack a little bit worse. Because keep in mind, the gem, like I was using it before, you kind of have to use it before your play. You have to chain it in front of your play if you want to use it before combat, right? I'm a little scared, though. It's possible he didn't misplay and he actually just wants me to attack. He has a combat trick. And we have, like, a very safe situation that I kind of shouldn't just throw away for no reason. So it is kind of bad to try to take any attack here. I'm supposed to just chill, right? Yeah, I'll just pass. He needed Daybreak. He needed... Oh, for the gem? No, he's got Revan Daylight Spear. You're saying he needed to Daybreak so he couldn't have gems, but he's got a card that means it's always day for them. So they can play a card and then still Daybreak after that. Stop roping. Yeah, I am. A lot of people, like, come into my stream and say, like, I rope a lot. And it's true. I try to, like, at least make it engaging by explaining my thought processes. But I think a lot of people sort of, like, feel like card games are simpler than they are. There's always just, like, so much you have to be thinking about if you want to play them at a high level. And I think it's a good habit to get into. There's a lot of situations where I do rope that kind of don't demand an action, though. And that's on me. But I think one of my objectives as a card game streamer is to just, like, show you guys what there is to really be thinking about. Because I think a lot of people think of, like, just card games in general as simpler than they really are. And they can be played very simply, you know? It's like, they can be great, like, sort of like phone games, or just, like, you know, when you're on the toilet, or when you're queuing for a game of, like, a MOBA. I think that's how a lot of people play card games, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. But there's also a lot of depth if you want to go in that direction too. So we drew the second Leona, and that turns into Leona's Morning Light because we have the Leona on board. So this is pretty scary for us because it means we have the ability to potentially blow someone out. But he should be challenging either the Scourge or Leona here. So he takes the Scourge. He has to decide which threat is bigger, right? Does he kill the Leona? He gets to keep his unit if he does, but then he leaves the Scourge up on our board. Okay, he's gemming first. I like that. It's a bit better.
Devotion through battle.
Punish transgressions.
Whoa. Wow, 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 wow. So he's attacking with the 3-2, but not the 2-2. So this is what we call sort of like an extreme telegraph. You always want to be evaluating what they could have in their hands. And what this says to me is that he just drew, where is it? This card, Blessing of Targon, is the most likely. He just drew this card, which, if I'm right, it would be the left card in his hand here. Basically, what that would mean is he wants me to block the Leona with the 3-2, and he didn't want me to be able to block Leona to the 2-2, which is why he attacked with a 3-2 and left it back, right? So this kind of tells me I don't really want to be blocking with Leona here, which I'm perfectly fine just kind of like playing it safe. I don't really need, like, you know, the big swath of units, so I can just take these blocks and I'll be fine. This is, I think, a pretty big telegraph. We'll see, though. Sunblessed Vigor. I'm fine with that. So we have the ability to play Morning Light. And what that'll do is it'll stun 2 things for our attack. So we could get a pretty good attack here, and we can also Braum to try to get it in. We want to be wary of that potential like 3-3 trigger, but I think we are going to get a pretty good developed attack for next turn. So we just want to make sure we're getting maximum value. I really like the Golden Sister as well as a way of like engineering that value, but I think the play that I want the most is actually Braum Mentor. I think I just want to maximize my long-term value. The only problem with that is Spacey Sketcher needs a discard, and the best discard target for Spacey Sketcher is actually Mentor of Stones in this hand. What I could do is just do Braum into Golden Sister, and I think that's actually maybe the best play here. It fills up my board, it plays for like the most value to mana, it leaves the Mentor and Stones for later if I did end up wanting a discard target, and Mentor is really just not that good at these stages of the game, right? Not that good at these stages in the game. So we just want to fill up our board and then open with Leona's Morning Light. This means we don't get to open attack, which is a bit of a downside, right? But I think in this case, it's going to be well worth it. We just want to make sure we are stopping a good amount of value every step of the way. We can open with it. I don't think there's really much of a downside in opening with it. Let's open with Leona's Morning Light here. So this is going to buff our entire board. And the Leona should be basically stunning out 2 things. I believe this was confirmed that this is how the interaction works. Because this Daybreaks, and because it also triggers the Daybreak of Solari Soldier, it should stun 2 things on his board. And we can see that happening here with like the 2 Leona stuns going on. So they'll stun his 2 strongest units and basically make my board super scary for the turn. And this is kind of how Leona decks work. Like, you just kind of want to amass a board. This is the very prototypical, like, mid-range concept, where you just want to amass a board and make sure you're good. Okay, so we want to be wary of the fact that he could easily +3/+3 whenever he wants. And what that means is we don't want to give him, like, a terribly good exchange. I think there's kind of no way of, like, avoiding that, though. So I'm pretty happy to just kind of take in this attack. Looks like a pretty sweet attack here. Like, his best case scenario is he +3/+3s his shield bearer into a 6/9, and then his 6/9 unit blocks like my lifesteal. But there's not really anything I can do about that, and he's taking a ton of damage, so I think this is gonna have to be fine here. So we can see here if I was right about the hand read. If I was, his last card in hand will be a 5 mana +3/+3, I think, or maybe something equivalent. There it is, Blessing of Targon. So yeah, I mean, I think that there's always so much room in card games to just like strategize that I think people are overlooking. It's like, that's a really valuable hand read. We're able to like entirely predict what his card is just off the back of like one way he played in a way that he kind of wouldn't logically do if it was any other hand. Okay, so I mean, he's just left completely without a hand here, completely without anything. I can go ahead and Star Shaping just to be mana efficient. I think there's kind of not really a downside for it here. Might as well just heal Leona. Oh god, I clicked. Dude, okay, so I do this thing where I just like, I spam click. I spam click a lot. It's like, it's a habit from when I used to play MOBAs, just to kind of like sort of keep my fingers active, and just like, I need to not do that with Celestials because you don't get any like, the UI just immediately goes to like click boxes. There's no period of like safety frames. I have to stop doing this because this is like the 3rd time today already where I've just spam clicked into a random grab. Oh god. From 5-head to Papega in 30 seconds. I'm so sorry, guys. This is not how it was supposed to go, dude. I make this like 5-head soul read and I'm like, man, 100% he's got this card in hand. It's like I was able to put it to the draw. I was able to put that card to like the single card. It's probably a 2-of in his entire deck left, right? Like, and again, that's like a 7% chance if he's running the 3-of, and I put it to a specific draw, and then like 10 seconds later, I just misclick into a random card. What the hell?
Face my shield.
Oh well, that's fine. I don't think there's really too much to do here. It's just like we can take the trade downs. Like, we just out-resource him. You look at this situation as, like, we have the board, we have the hands, like, he's on top decks. Not only does he have a weak hand, but he's on top decks, right? And there's a really big difference between that. When they have, like, 1 or 2 cards in their hands, usually at the end of the game, those are big cards that they've been saving. But when he's on top decks, his 1 or 2 cards are going to be completely random, right? So what that means is, you know, we just have complete dominance over all the resources in this game, right? We have all the health, we have all the cards in hand. There's really nothing he can do at this point. We can go ahead and see what we're getting off of Spacey Sketcher. Sure.
One star's whoopsie is another spark.
Dude, this is a very, very fun deck, though. I would say, like, this deck it's more expensive to craft than the other one. It's not like a budget deck, but this is a very, very fun, very, very cheap deck, right? It's like, it's fairly straightforward. It'll teach you really good fundamentals, and it's just like a pure mid-range value deck. This is like it's a deck that just challenges fundamentals, right? You need to understand the idea of, like, value. You need to understand the idea of tempo. It doesn't do anything super crazy. You need to think about, like, whether you're open attacking or maybe, like, developing into your attacks. You know, you need to manage, like, a couple of keywords, nothing too crazy, like, you know, the Daybreak, and in this case, the Nightfall. But it's just, like, it's a very, like, simple and raw deck, right? But it also plays very unique because it's very fun. It's very, very challenging towards those fundamentals because you still need to be picking cards off of your invokes. It's going to play different every time, and you're going to have to, like, the difference between a good player and a bad player playing this deck is going to be very, very apparent. So I'm going to update this. I still need to tweak it. I need to build it out more and get better at playing it and show you guys, like, a better version of this. Because keep in mind, this version is still what I made just off of pure theorycraft, and as I play it, I'll upgrade it, and it might end up looking quite different. But this is probably just, like, if I were to recommend, if you were to come to me and say, Swim, what deck should I craft? This is just, like, a great universal deck because it's very, like, it's very challenging, but only in the most kind of, like, essential ways to how the game plays. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a great deck to kind of get a feel for learning the game, while being simple in the right ways and challenging in the right ways, if that makes sense.